January 20th, 1993. Audrey Hepburn dies at home in Switzerland. She's 63 years old, surrounded by her two sons, Sean Hepburn Ferrer, age 32, and Luca Andrea Dotti, age 23, and her partner Robert Wolders. Her last years were spent traveling to the worst places on earth: Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Bangladesh, holding starving children, using her fame to force the world to pay attention, raising millions of dollars for UNICEF, saving lives. And now, she's gone. And her sons, grief-stricken, vow to continue her humanitarian work, to honor her legacy, to keep helping children the way she did. She believed every child has the right to health, to hope, to tenderness, and to life. Sean says at the 1993 Oscars, accepting the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award on his mother's behalf. On her behalf, I dedicate this to the children of the world. Beautiful words, a beautiful promise, and for a few years, the sons keep it. They establish the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund. They exhibit their mother's memorabilia, her iconic Givenchy gowns, her photographs, her awards, and donate the proceeds to children's charities around the world. Hundreds of thousands of dollars raised, dozens of charities helped, hospitals, organizations for former child soldiers. Exactly what Audrey would have wanted. And then, in 2008, something changes. Sean Ferrer runs into financial difficulties, a divorce, a burdensome real estate transaction in Italy, money problems. And suddenly, the charity that was supposed to honor his mother's legacy becomes a weapon, a tool for control, a source of conflict. And for the next 24+ years, from 2008 to beyond 2019 and still ongoing today, Audrey Hepburn's two sons wage a bitter, public, devastating legal war. Not over her humanitarian legacy, not over how best to help children, but over money, over possessions, over who gets to profit from their mother's name and image. This is the story of how greed destroyed everything Audrey Hepburn built. How two sons betrayed their mother's most important wish. How a storage locker full of belongings became more important than saving children's lives. Let's start with the will, because that's where this entire mess begins. January 1993. Audrey Hepburn is dying. She knows she has weeks, maybe days left. Appendix cancer, inoperable. She spent the past few months getting her affairs in order, and she writes a will, handwritten, simple, clear in its intentions, vague in its execution. The will addresses her jewelry first. Specific pieces go to specific people. Close friends, family members, her partner, Robert Wolders. These bequests are detailed, explicit, no room for confusion. Then the will addresses the big stuff: her estate, her intellectual property, the rights to her name, her image, her likeness, her film contracts, royalties from her movies, her personal effects, the contents of a storage locker at Los Angeles Fine Arts and Wine Storage, photos, movie posters, clothing, jewels, awards, studio scripts, costumes, gloves, hats, scarves, decades of memorabilia from one of the most iconic careers in Hollywood history. And here's what Audrey writes: "My sons shall inherit these possessions equally, 50-50 split." That's it. Equally, 50-50. But she doesn't specify who gets what. Doesn't list items. Doesn't say, Sean gets the breakfast at Tiffany's dress, Luca gets the My Fair Lady costumes. She just says, divide it equally. And she makes this decision because, and this is important, she believes her sons will be able to work it out themselves. She believes they love each other, that they'll be fair, that they'll honor her memory by cooperating, by being kind, by acting like brothers. She's wrong. 2006, 13 years after Audrey's death. Christie's auction house in London holds a sale of Audrey Hepburn memorabilia. The star attraction, the little black dress. The Givenchy dress Audrey wore in the opening scene of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Iconic, timeless, one of the most recognizable costumes in film history. The dress was expected to sell for maybe 50,000 to 70,000 pounds. A significant sum, but reasonable for such a famous piece. It sells for 467,200 pounds. That's $920,909 US dollars. Nearly $1 million for a dress. Suddenly everyone realizes Audrey Hepburn's belongings aren't just sentimental. They're worth a fortune. And Sean and Luca, the two sons who've been mostly cooperative up to this point, start looking at that storage locker in Los Angeles differently. Not as their mother's memories, but as assets, as money, as something worth fighting over. 2007, Sean Hepburn Ferrer is 47 years old. He's going through a divorce. His third marriage is ending. It's expensive, messy, and simultaneously, he's involved in a financially burdensome real estate transaction in Italy. The details aren't fully public, but multiple court documents describe it as a financial crisis. Sean needs money, and he starts looking at the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, the charity he co-founded with his brother in 1993, not as a humanitarian organization, but as a business, a source of revenue. Because here's how the fund works. Sean and Luca co-own their mother's intellectual property. Her name, her image, her likeness. They have equal authority, and they license that IP to the charity, which uses Audrey's image and memorabilia to raise money through exhibitions. Timeless Audrey exhibitions. Traveling shows featuring Givenchy gowns, photographs, awards, personal items. People pay to see these exhibits. The fund raises hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all of it, 100% of the proceeds, goes to children's charities. That was the agreement. That was the promise they made in 1993. But in 2008, Sean starts questioning this arrangement. Why is all the money going to charity? Why isn't he being compensated for the use of his mother's IP? Why should the fund get to use Audrey Hepburn's name and image for free? 2008. 4 years into Sean's financial difficulties, he makes a decision. He resigns from the board of the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund. He's been chairman for 19 years, but now he steps down, and he convinces his younger brother Luca to take over as chairman. Luca, age 42, accepts. He believes in the fund, believes in continuing their mother's work. Sean tells him, "I need to focus on other projects. I'm starting the Audrey Hepburn Society at the U.S. Fund for UNICEF. I'll still be involved in humanitarian work, just through a different organization." Luca believes him, takes over the fund, and doesn't realize, not yet, that Sean's resignation isn't about new projects. It's about control. Because once Luca is chairman, once Luca is the public face of the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, Sean can position himself as the outsider, the protector of his mother's legacy, the one who decides whether the fund is worthy of using Audrey's name. April 2013. Less than a year after Luca becomes chairman, Sean sends a letter to the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund. The letter is formal, legal, and it says this: I am terminating the fund's right to use Audrey Hepburn's name, image, and likeness for fundraising purposes. Effective immediately. Think about that for a moment. The charity that Sean co-founded in 1993 to honor his mother. The charity that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for children. The charity that Luca is now running, believing he's continuing his mother's work. Sean is trying to shut it down, or at least trying to force it to pay him, because that's what he wants. According to court documents filed later, Sean's position is this: the fund can continue using Audrey Hepburn's IP, but only if it pays a significant portion of the fundraising proceeds to a charity of my choice, or it can just stop using her name entirely. He's holding the fund hostage. Pay me, or shut down. Those are the options. But Sean doesn't stop with the letter. April 2013. Sean takes control of the fund's GoDaddy account. GoDaddy is the company that manages the fund's website and email domains. And because Sean has access, he was chairman for 19 years, he has all the login information, he goes into the account and changes the password. Locks Luca out. Now Sean controls the fund's website. Sean controls the fund's emails. Sean controls the fund's online presence. Luca, the chairman, can't access his own organization's digital infrastructure. It's a hostile takeover. And it gets worse. 2013 to 2016. Over the next 3 years, Sean systematically interferes with the fund's exhibitions. Remember, the exhibitions are how the fund raises money. Timeless Audrey shows traveling to museums and venues around the world. People pay admission. The fund donates all proceeds to children's charities. But Sean starts blocking these exhibitions. 2013, an exhibition planned for Australia. Sean sends a letter threatening legal action if it goes forward. The organizers, scared of a lawsuit, postpone the exhibition. 2013, an exhibition planned for South Korea. Sean sends another threatening letter. The organizers cancel entirely. 2016, multiple exhibitions planned for China. Major venues, significant fundraising potential. Sean has his Swiss lawyers send letters to the Chinese exhibitors threatening to sue if they proceed. The exhibitions are delayed. Some are eventually held, but only after months of legal negotiations. Every time the fund tries to raise money, Sean interferes. And Luca, trying to keep the fund operational, trying to honor his mother's legacy, is fighting a constant battle against his own brother. January 2015. Sean tries something even more shocking. He contacts Hubert de Givenchy, the legendary French fashion designer who created Audrey's most iconic looks, who dressed her for Sabrina, Funny Face, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Charade, who loved Audrey like a sister for 40 years. Givenchy had previously donated several of his original gowns, the actual dresses he made for Audrey, to the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, a generous donation to help the charity raise money through exhibitions. And Sean asks Givenchy to falsify a letter, to backdate a donation letter, to write that he had actually donated the gowns to Sean Ferrer and Luca Dotti personally, not to the charity. Essentially, Sean is asking Givenchy to lie, to create a fake document that would give Sean and Luca ownership of the gowns, allowing Sean to control how they're used. Givenchy, age 88 at the time, refuses. Absolutely refuses. He's insulted by the request. He donated those gowns to the charity to help children exactly as Audrey would have wanted. And Sean is trying to manipulate him into betraying that gift. Givenchy refuses, and Sean's plan fails. But the fact that he tried, that he was willing to ask an 88-year-old man who loved his mother to falsify legal documents, tells you everything about Sean's priorities. If you're starting to realize that even humanitarian legacies aren't safe from family greed, subscribe, because this story gets even worse. 2015 May, Sean Hepburn Ferrer files a lawsuit against Luca Dotti. Not about the charity, about the storage locker. Remember the storage locker? Los Angeles Fine Arts and Wine Storage. The one Audrey left to her sons in her will. Divide equally, 50-50. 22 years after Audrey's death. The contents are still sitting in that locker, untouched. Because Sean and Luca can't agree on who gets what. And the problem is this. Equally is ambiguous. Does it mean equal in volume? Equal number of items? Equal monetary value? If it's equal monetary value, who decides what each item is worth? Value at the time of Audrey's death in 1993? Or value now, in 2015, when a single dress sold for $920,000? Audrey didn't specify. She assumed her sons would figure it out. They haven't. So Sean sues. He wants a judge to intervene, to divide the items legally. Because after 22 years, he and Luca can't even agree on how to split their mother's belongings. February 8th, 2017. Exactly 24 years to the day after Audrey's death. February 8th was also Luca's birthday, making this even more painful. The Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund files a lawsuit against Sean Hepburn Ferrer. The charity is suing one of its co-founders. The lawsuit alleges intentional interference with contractual relationships, trademark infringement, sabotaging fundraising efforts. The lawsuit asks the court to grant the charity unlimited rights to use Audrey Hepburn's name, image, and likeness for fundraising purposes without Sean's permission. Because right now, Sean and Luca co-own the IP. And Sean is using that co-ownership to block everything. The lawsuit states, Ferrer seeks to entirely control, limit, and prohibit the fund from using the Hepburn IP, unless it is willing to pay a significant portion of the fundraising proceeds to a charity of Ferrer's choice, or to simply preclude the fund from utilizing the Hepburn IP altogether. If the court does not intervene, Ferrer's actions will irreparably damage the sterling reputation of the late Audrey Hepburn. The lawsuit is damning. It details everything. The 2008 financial crisis, the 2012 resignation, the 2013 termination letter, the GoDaddy takeover, the exhibition blockings, the Givenchy falsification attempt. And it makes this argument. Sean Hepburn Ferrer is betraying his mother's legacy. Audrey Hepburn spent the last 5 years of her life traveling to refugee camps, war zones, famine-stricken villages. She held dying children. She cried for them on camera. She used her fame, the thing she hated most about her life, to force the world to care. And she established a humanitarian legacy that was supposed to continue after her death. Sean is destroying that legacy for money, for control, for ego. Stephen E. Young, the fund's attorney, issues a public statement. Sean should be ashamed of himself for violating his mother's deepest wishes to care for children. The lawsuit goes public. The press picks it up. Headlines everywhere. Audrey Hepburn's eldest son swed by charity. Family feud threatens Hepburn's humanitarian legacy. Sons battle over Audrey's name. And Sean, living in Italy, avoids being served with court papers for weeks. Sean eventually responds, not with an apology, not with a settlement offer, with a countersuit. Sean sues the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund for trademark infringement. His argument? The fund never had independent rights to use Audrey Hepburn's name and image. It only had permission because Sean and Luca, as co-owners of the IP, granted that permission, and now Sean is revoking his permission. Therefore, the fund is using Audrey's name illegally. It's a legal technicality argument, and it completely ignores the humanitarian mission. The dying children. The legacy Audrey wanted to leave. Sean's position is purely about legal rights and control, not about helping anyone. 2017 to 2019. The lawsuit drags on for 2 years. Depositions, discovery, motions, legal bills piling up on both sides. Money that could be going to children's charities is instead going to lawyers. The fund, struggling to operate while its ability to use Audrey's name is in legal limbo, has to cancel or postpone exhibitions. Fundraising drops. Some partner charities stop receiving donations, and Sean, meanwhile, forms his own organization. The Audrey Hepburn Society at the U.S. Fund for UNCEF, a new charity under Sean's control. He serves as honorary chairman, and according to Sean's later statements, the society raises over $150 million for children worldwide, which sounds impressive. Until you realize, Sean created a competing organization while simultaneously trying to shut down the charity his brother runs. He's not opposed to using Audrey's name for fundraising. He just wants to be the one controlling it. He wants the credit, the recognition, the power. October 2019. After a 4-week trial in Los Angeles Superior Court, Judge David Sotelo issues his ruling, and Sean wins. The judge finds the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund never had independent rights to use Audrey Hepburn's name and likeness. The fund only had permission because Sean and Luca, as co-owners, granted that permission. And because they're co-owners, unanimous consent is required. If either Sean or Luca withdraws consent, the license is terminated. Sean has the legal right to block the fund from using his mother's IP. The fund's claims are rejected. Sean prevails on all counts. Sean issues a statement. After having been vilified in public court filings and press releases, the truth has finally emerged. He positions himself as the victim, the misunderstood son who was only trying to protect his mother's legacy. But here's what the ruling actually means. The charity Audrey Hepburn's Sons founded in 1993 to continue her humanitarian work can no longer operate effectively. Because Sean, exercising his legal rights, refuses to grant permission. The fund isn't shut down entirely, but it's crippled, limited, unable to do the large-scale fundraising it was doing before. And Sean, having won his legal battle, goes back to Italy, back to his life. Having spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to ensure that his mother's charity can't use her name without his approval. And the storage locker? Still disputed. As of 2019 and beyond, more than 26 years after Audrey's death, the contents are still sitting in Los Angeles fine arts and wine storage. The 2015 lawsuit sought a judge's intervention to divide the items. Some sources suggest a settlement was eventually reached. Items divided, some sold at Christie's, proceeds split. But the exact resolution isn't fully public. What is public? It took over 2 decades for Sean and Luca to figure out how to share their mother's belongings. 2 decades of lawyers, judges, court filings, All because Audrey wrote, "Divide equally," and trusted her sons to be reasonable. Let's talk about the irony, because that's what makes this story so devastating. Audrey Hepburn, in the last 5 years of her life, dedicated herself to saving children, not just raising money, not just lending her name, actually traveling to the worst places on earth. October 1988. Audrey travels to Ethiopia. The country is suffering from famine. Thousands of children are starving. Audrey visits refugee camps, holds children who are so malnourished, their bodies are skeletal. She cries on camera. She tells reporters, "I've seen the concentration camps. I know what starvation looks like. But this is worse, because these are children, and we can save them if we care enough." February 1989. Audrey travels to El Salvador. The country is in the middle of a civil war. She visits hospitals filled with children who've been injured by landmines, gunfire, bombings. She holds them, comforts them, uses her fame to get the international press to pay attention. September 1989. Sudan, another famine, another refugee camp, more dying children. Audrey spends days in 120-degree heat, traveling to remote villages, documenting the suffering, begging the world to help. October 1989, Bangladesh. Audrey visits schools, orphanages, feeding centers. She meets children who've survived cyclones, floods, poverty. She hugs them, plays with them, promises them that people care. November 1991, Somalia. This is Audrey's last major UNICEF trip. She's 62 years old. She's exhausted. She's already sick. The appendix cancer is growing, though she doesn't know it yet, but she goes anyway. Because children are dying. And if her fame can help, she'll use it. She spends days in Mogadishu, in refugee camps, in feeding centers. She holds children who are hours from death. She cries. She tells the press, "These children have nothing, no food, no water, no future, unless we help them." 3 months later, November 1992, Audrey is diagnosed with appendix cancer. She's given 3 months to live. She spends those final months at home in Switzerland, with her sons, with Robert Wolders, and she talks about her UNICEF work, about the children she met, the children she tried to save. Her last public statement, recorded weeks before her death, is about children. "I've learned that children are the most important thing. Everything else, fame, success, wealth, means nothing if we don't protect our children." She dies January 20th, 1993. And her sons, standing at her funeral, vow to continue her work, to help children the way she did. And for a few years, they do. The Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund raises hundreds of thousands of dollars, helps hospitals, orphanages, organizations for former child soldiers. But then Sean runs into money problems, and the charity becomes an obstacle, a competitor, something to control or destroy. And for the next 24+ years, Audrey's sons fight, not over how best to help children, but over money, over possessions, over who gets to profit from their mother's name. The irony is unbearable. Audrey spent her last years holding dying children. Her sons spend decades fighting over her dresses. Let's talk about what Audrey would think, because we don't have to guess. We know. 1992. Audrey is dying. She knows she has months left, and she writes letters to friends, to family, to her sons. One letter, written to her close friend and UNICEF colleague, says this: "I hope Sean and Luca will continue the work. Not for me, for the children. Because that's what matters. The children always matter most." Another letter to a different friend: "I raised my boys to be kind, to care about others, to use whatever privileges they have to help people who have less. I hope they remember that." She hoped. She believed. She trusted that her sons would honor her legacy, that they would put children above possessions, that they would work together instead of fighting. She was wrong. And the saddest part, the part that makes this story truly tragic, is that both sons claim they're honoring her legacy. Sean says he's protecting Audrey's image from misuse, that the fund wasn't operating properly, that he had to take control to preserve her reputation. Luca says he's continuing Audrey's humanitarian work, that the fund was raising money for children exactly as Audrey wanted, that Sean's interference destroyed what she built. They both think they're right. They both think they're honoring her. And meanwhile, the charity struggles. The exhibitions stop. The fundraising drops. And children who could have been helped aren't helped. Because Audrey's sons are too busy fighting each other to actually save lives. 2020, a documentary about Audrey's life is released. Audrey, directed by Helena Cohn. Sean Hepburn Ferrer participates. He talks about his mother, about her kindness, her compassion, her dedication to children. He says, "She taught us that the most important thing is to help others, to use whatever we have to make the world better." The irony is staggering. Sean is saying these words while simultaneously blocking the charity that's trying to do exactly that, while suing his brother, while fighting over possessions, while ensuring that his mother's name can't be used to help children without his permission. And he doesn't see the contradiction, or maybe he does, and he doesn't care. 2021 to present. The legal battles continue. New lawsuits, new disputes. The storage locker situation may be partially resolved, but the charity fight isn't over. Sean and Luca still co-own Audrey's IP, still require unanimous consent for licensing, still can't agree. The Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund still exists, but it operates in limited capacity. Small exhibitions, modest fundraising, nothing like the major international shows it was doing before 2013. And Sean's Audrey Hepburn Society at UNICEF? According to Sean's 2019 statement, it was closed. Why? Because when my brother Luca refused to continue to grant the society a license, we had to close it. So Luca blocked Sean's organization. Sean blocked Luca's organization, and the result? Two charities, both founded to honor Audrey, both intended to help children, crippled by their founders' inability to cooperate. Audrey Hepburn saved thousands of children. Her sons can't even save her legacy. Here's what we need to talk about. Here's the lesson. Because this isn't just about Audrey Hepburn. This is about what happens when we prioritize possessions over people, when we let ego destroy purpose, when we forget what actually matters. Audrey Hepburn left behind two things: possessions and a legacy. The possessions, a storage locker full of dresses, awards, photographs. Valuable, meaningful, but ultimately just things. The legacy, 5 years of humanitarian work. Thousands of children helped. A model for how to use fame for good. Priceless, irreplaceable. And her sons chose possessions. They spent 24+ years fighting over dresses, while children who could have been helped with that time, money, and energy went unhelped. The legal fees alone, hundreds of thousands of dollars on both sides, could have funded schools, hospitals, feeding programs. But instead, that money went to lawyers, to court filings, to a battle over who controls Audrey's name. It's a betrayal, not just of Audrey, but of every child she tried to save, every child she held in those refugee camps, every child she promised that people cared, because her sons proved people don't care, not when money is involved, not when control is at stake. Possessions matter more than legacy. Ego matters more than children's lives. And here's the worst part. Audrey saw this coming. Not the specific details, but the possibility. That's why she wrote her will the way she did. Vague about possessions, specific about jewelry, because the jewelry was small, easy to divide. But the possessions, the memorabilia, the IP rights, those were complicated. And Audrey, who spent her entire life avoiding conflict, who hated confrontation, who always tried to see the best in people, couldn't bring herself to write explicit instructions. She hoped her sons would be kind to each other. She hoped they would honor her by working together. She wrote, "Divide equally," and trusted them. And they failed her. Not legally. Sean won his lawsuit. He has every legal right to control his mother's IP. But morally, ethically, in terms of honoring what Audrey actually wanted, both sons failed. Because Audrey didn't care about who owned her dresses, she cared about children, and her sons forgot that, or decided it didn't matter as much as money. January 20th, 2025. 32 years since Audrey's death. If she were alive today, she'd be 95 years old. And if she could see what her sons have done, the lawsuits, the blocked exhibitions, the crippled charity, the 24+ years of fighting, what would she say? We know. Because she said it in 1992 in one of her final letters. The best thing to hold on to in life is each other. She was quoting one of her own famous lines. And she meant it. Family, love, connection, that's what matters. Not possessions, not control, not winning. Each other. Her sons forgot. And in forgetting, they destroyed the most important things she left behind. Not her dresses, not her awards, her example. The example of a woman who used her privilege to help others, who put children above fame, who dedicated her final years to saving lives. That's the legacy Sean and Luca were supposed to protect. And they failed, because they couldn't agree on who got which items from a storage locker. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. This is Audrey Hepburn, The Hidden Truth. From wartime horrors to Hollywood secrets, we uncover what they've been hiding for decades. Subscribe to discover the dark truth behind the elegant image.